Your dad was sadly diagnosed with COPD. Can you explain a little bit about what this is and how it affected him?
We decided the best way to deal with it would be to go and talk about everything. Otherwise it becomes a bit of an elephant in the room. We were able to sort of put a plan together as to what we would like to happen or what Dad would like to happen as the time went by.
And Emma, if you feel comfortable, do you mind sharing about the moment that your dad passed away? Welcome to the Life and Loss podcast, where we aim to normalise conversations about illness and grief, helping individuals feel less isolated through shared experiences. I'm Hannah, and today I'm joined by Emma. In this episode, Emma will share her personal journey of loss following the death of her dad. Emma has previously described her experience as being part of a club that no one wants to belong to, but finding unity and strength in knowing that you're not alone in your grief. She's here to share her story to provide comfort to others facing similar circumstances. Welcome, Emma.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me. So can you start just by telling me a bit about your dad and what your favourite memories are of him?
My dad was quite a shy character, I guess. He didn't like having his photograph taken, and but was always there in the background if you needed somebody to talk to, and kept it quiet, but never stopped me doing anything I wanted to do until afterwards when he would give me his advice. In hindsight, he'd say. But he was a great guy. He was a heating engineer by trade, and always around for my brother and I, and taught us how to sail as children. And just an all-round great guy. Yeah.
And your dad was sadly diagnosed with COPD, which I'm going to try and pronounce, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Hopefully I've got that right.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about what this is and how it affected him?
So it was probably back in about 2011, 2012 when he was first diagnosed with it. We'd been on holiday and we'd gone down to a beach in Devon and then tried to climb back up the hill. And it took the dog towing him and with my daughter's pushchair to get him back up. I think that's when we first noticed something was probably wrong. It's basically where your lungs, they stop working properly, and over time it just gets worse and worse. It can be a result of smoking, which he did from a child, but also it can be someone who's worked in an environment of flux or asbestos or anything really where you breathe in particles, and things can exacerbate that if you get a cold or what have you. So yes, that's where it started. Then we started with inhalers and different things, and over the course of the years it just slowly takes things away really, your confidence and your ability to breathe is quite important.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And he struggled with it for a long time, and that must have taken a big toll on him personally and for you as a family as well.
Yeah, so as I say, in 2012 we had the diagnosis, and I don't know, 3 or 4 years after that we decided that we would all move in together as a family, and so we had our house extended, and then we as a family had a chance to go to America for 3 years with my husband's job. He was in the Navy. So we went off and did that. And Mum and Dad came to visit several times. And when we got home, we all moved back in together. And it was all going swimmingly, living together, until Dad started to deteriorate. And so we had him and my mum and my husband and I, and then my 2 teenage children. So that's when we first kind of met Forest Holme, if you like. We were introduced through Dr. Faro to Forest Holme and the DARES team, and then we had some counselling as a family. We decided the best way to deal with it would be to go and talk about everything and get it out in the open, because it's only going to get harder. So we thought we'd better talk about it, and otherwise it becomes a bit of an elephant in the room.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And eventually your dad was admitted to Forest Holme Hospice, and he said that he felt safe there. Why was that?
So, as I say, we had counselling as a family. Dad had had some counselling. He'd also been fortunate enough to use some of their holistic therapies, reflexology. So he was comfortable coming and going from Forest Holme. We'd met Kathy Lett. She was amazing for all of us. And with Dr. Faro and the DARES team, which is the team that helped with breathing difficulties, we were able to sort of put a plan together as to what we would like to happen, or what Dad would like to happen as the time went by. And we were very lucky. The day that Dad decided on the Sunday, it was a Sunday morning in May, and he said, I can't do this anymore. He'd already decided he didn't want to go to hospital and that anymore. He was on oxygen 24 hours a day. And he said, I'm not taking my medicine anymore. And so I phoned up the DARES team, and then I phoned Forest Holme, and they had a bed, fortunately. And Dad we were able to take him there ourselves. We didn't call an ambulance, which was, amazing, because it meant that he was in control as much as possible. And the minute we walked through the door, I don't know, it was such a relief, because my mum and I could go from being the carers to just being a wife and a daughter. And you can go in and out of Forest Holme as much as you want to. And everybody's so helpful and friendly, and it's just like a warm hug, really.
We will take a moment to pause whilst you reflect on your own personal experience of loss. If you feel able, share your thoughts by commenting below. We hope that by sharing this personal experience, you will feel less alone in your grief. And there's quite a lot of misconceptions about hospices. And what would you say to anyone that is fearful about a loved one going into a hospice?
I would say, I know everybody's frightened, especially if you've had time to think about what's coming. But there is nothing to be frightened of. The people in there, the nurses and the doctors and the volunteers, they're there to help you and help your loved one, ultimately. They take away the pressure of you doing the caring. They just make them feel safe and comfortable and take away that element of anxiety, I think, and feeling frightened. Yeah, it's good.
And Emma, if you feel comfortable, do you mind sharing about the moment that your dad passed away?
Well, I wasn't actually there. We sat with my dad a lot in the 2.5 days. It was only 2.5 days from not taking the medicine to him actually passing away. My brother was there last of all. He stayed till about midnight. And actually the nurses there had said often your loved one will wait until they're on their own because they don't want to put you through the final bit. So we weren't there. But we had a phone call in the night that said he'd passed away. And I said to my mum, what do you want to do? And she said, I don't know if I want to go and see him. And I said, well, I would like to go. So we went down there, and it wasn't very long after he'd actually passed. And he was still warm, but I cherish going because he was so still and quiet and at peace, which I hadn't seen for years, because all this heaving for breath constantly, it was always very hard to watch because you couldn't do anything to help. But the fact was, he didn't have any tubes on him, and he just looked like he was asleep. So it was a treasured moment, really, that I keep here, because over that period of time, there was a lot of worry. And I will thank Forest Holme forever for, allowing our family to have that.
Thank you. Sorry. How did you cope in the moments that followed, the days that followed?
I don't know, really. Yeah. Well, my parents were members of a local yacht club. My dad had money on his yacht club card, so we went to the yacht club and I had quite a lot to drink and eat and then drink a bit more. So probably not the best way to cope, but I felt comfortable there because that's, where we'd spent lots of time together and that was my dad's place to go. So we did that. The difficulty afterwards really was, dealing with the reality of it, I suppose. My dad really wanted his body to be left to science, but it was post-COVID, so that wasn't really going to be an option. I did try for him, but they didn't want his body at the time, so I had to arrange to have a direct cremation and things like that. But I was doing pretty well. And I had counselling actually before Dad died, because I think I actually started my mourning, losing him a long time before he actually passed away. So I'd had sessions with Kathy a long time before, which I feel really helped, and I feel very lucky that I was able to have those when I needed them. But you kind of get on, I think, and you do it for I did it for my mum. She needed the support. They'd been married for 54 years, I think. Wow. So it was a big loss for her. And she was exhausted, really, after him going. It's hard work on the family and the carers to be doing that all the time. Yeah. So, and now I would say to anybody, don't be frightened of the hospice. They're an amazing group of people, and make full use of what we've got and support it, because we need to. Yeah. And
has your grief changed over time?
It would appear not. Yes, it has. I'm trying now to look back to when it was good. And I also try to remind myself of the funny things that happened during those periods of time. I remember, one session, Dad had an exacerbation and we ended up in A&E, and his best friend was in the cubicle next door. Oh. We were like, hello. So, I think you just have to remember, back to the good times where you can, and, have your support of your friends and family, and just live your best life.
Yeah. And Emma, final question for you. Anyone that's listening to this podcast today who may have recently lost a parent, what advice would you give to them?
I would say take each day as it comes. But, try to be kind to yourself. Don't push yourself too hard. And seek out help. Seek out people that are in a similar situation to you. I don't go to the groups because I'm quite busy, but I would imagine they're, very beneficial. I love going to the Tie Yellow Ribbon event purely because I walk into the area where it's happening and think, we're all here for a reason, and that's because we have a connection to Forest Holme, and nobody wants the connection, but I don't know, there's this strange feeling that you have. So I would say reach out and have help where you can get it, really.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to the Life and Loss podcast. If you'd like more information on our work, you can visit our website, which is foresthomehospice.org.uk. Thank you. Grief is a journey that none of us should navigate alone. If today's interview resonated with you, or if you know someone who could benefit from hearing it, I'd encourage you to subscribe and share this podcast. By spreading the word, you help us to reach others who may be grieving, letting them know that they're not alone and that there's a community here to support them.